What's your best but wait, it gets worse story? Friend of mine just lost her ex-husband and father of her child to a motorcycle accident. But wait, it gets worse. 15-year-old son had a birthday a few days after the accident. Gift arrived in the mail day of the birthday. His father had gotten him motorcycle lessons. Just heartbreaking. Ouch. A co-worker of mine, we'll call Andy, had a brother we'll call Mike. Mike's wife died from cancer, leaving Mike and his 2 kids who were around 5 and 7 years old. But wait, it gets worse. Overcome with grief, Mike ended up killing himself, leaving behind his 2 kids. But wait, it gets worse. Andy had to sue his own parents to get custody of Mike's kids due to several issues with the grandparents. But wait, it gets worse. Andy's wife died suddenly, leaving Andy to take care of Mike's 2 kids and his 2 kids around the same age. This all happened over a 3-year span. This is a kind of everyday, ongoing horror that makes this the most heartbreaking answer here to me. Got rear-ended by a truck. Pulled over to check my trunk on a hilly street. A car parked behind me rolled downhill and crushed me between it and my newly messed up trunk. Suffered some cracked ribs. Ouch. Oh goodness, I don't even know where to start with this, but here goes nothing. Last the 26th of December my phone rang early in the morning. My dad had passed away unexpectedly in the night sometime. One day after Christmas and the day before his birthday. I try to help my mom get through all the legal paperwork and things that comes after a spouse dies. I made sure she had groceries and company multiple times a week. I lived in a different town from my mom, so I was traveling a lot between towns. 6 weeks after my father passed, my mom fell ill. I brought her to the hospital early one Wednesday morning, had her flown out to a bigger hospital later that afternoon. She passed away that Saturday. Apparently she had an aggressive form of cancer, and any symptoms she must have been feeling we attributed to grief. But wait, there's more. The night of my mom's funeral, which I planned and made arrangements for, my horrible sister gets wasted and goes bananas, keeping my up all night when I was already physically and emotionally exhausted. The few days that her and her husband were in town, they basically just took what they wanted and accused me of stealing things. Not to my face but to family friends. I was left to clear, clean, and get the house ready for sale by myself. My mother had so many things from deceased family members that she hadn't had time to go through, sort, and donate yet, so I did by myself. But wait, there's more. 6 weeks after my mother passed away, while I was working on her house, I miscarried. In the last few weeks I have found out that I have fibroids and potential cancer in my uterus cervix, so I have a whole other path of uncertainty to walk down in the coming months. As far as I'm concerned, 2020 can hurry up and get the heck over already. Monday the 3rd. I know no one will see this, but my dear grandma passed away around 3 this morning. I just can't believe this keeps happening. That is absolutely heartbreaking. If you ever need support, send me a message and I'll be happy to lend an ear. There are also some great people over at our Mom for our Minute who are always willing to listen, care, commiserate, or congratulate. I sincerely hope that you kick cancer's butt. I was a manager at a hotel in Oakland. A valet parker took a guest's Corvette out for a joyride. He lost control of the car in a residential area and crashed into a parked car in a driveway. The Corvette and the parked car smashed through the home's garage door and caught on fire. The home partially burned down. The valet was caught by the police a block away, fleeing on foot with a broken leg. Credit where it's due, that guy is a tough bastard to limp around with a broken leg knowing that he'd be caught anyways. A month ago, though my dad had covered as he was quite fluish, vomiting etc. Test comes back no, he doesn't have it, but still sick. A few days later, the day after my brother's birthday, he dies on his bedroom floor of a massive heart attack. We're all in shock. Then my brother starts getting heart pains, probably from stress or anxiety, but insists on getting an EKG. Feels like he's going to pass out all the time. Probably fine but still stressful. 3 weeks to the day after my father dies, I get a phone call that my mother cannot breathe. Almost fainted on the stairs. Needs me to take her to the ER. I'm convinced she has COVID. She didn't. She's there till 3 AM. Needed 2 blood transfusions because her iron levels are insanely low. The day after that, after we've taken her home and start working on a nutrition plan, the dog gets bit by something. starts limping and drooling, and we have to rush him to the vet to make sure he's not having an allergic reaction. He's fine now, so hooray. Been a rough month, guys. My heart goes out and I am so sorry for your loss. Had a tooth pulled, got dry socket, finally recovered and had the implant surgery, got dry socket again. Also, found out laughing gas and hydrocodone gives me panic attacks. Friends of mine were getting married. They were planning a huge, fancy wedding in the major city where they lived. They both had large families and many friends. About a month before the wedding, the groom's mother has a massive heart attack. Miraculously, she somehow survives, but it seems unlikely she'll be able to attend the wedding because it was being held about 1,000 miles away from mom's home. However, she continues to improve and her doctor determines that she will be healthy enough to travel to the wedding by car. So, the groom's parents start heading out about 3 days before the wedding so they can take the trip slowly and get to the major city the day before the wedding. Mom's tired, but doing okay. She decides to skip out on the rehearsal dinner so that she can conserve her energy for the wedding and reception. Mom wakes up the next day, gets dressed, gets her hair and nails done, looks gorgeous. Her husband drives her to the church and gets her settled in the front pew. The wedding is to start in about 15 minutes. Just as the bride is getting ready to walk down the aisle, mom collapses in the church. An ambulance is called. Groom helps get mom into the ambulance. Dad goes with mom to the hospital, with groom's blessing. Wedding goes on as scheduled about 30 minutes after the initial start time because there are 2 other weddings scheduled at the church that particular day. Wedding ceremony is beautiful. Then, there was a gorgeous reception nearby just afterward. Reception is beautiful and then there was an after party that evening, also a ton of fun. We find out the next day that the groom's mother had passed in the church and was dead by the time the ambulance arrived. They made a show of trying to revive her, but she was gone. The groom knew this but didn't want to ruin his bride's wedding day. So, though he had just watched his mother die, he plastered a smile on his face and got through the day. He just told the bride they were taking his mom to the hospital to stabilize her. He didn't tell her what actually happened until the next day. The whole thing was so crazy, but despite all of it, they are still married 25 years later and have 3 gorgeous kids. So while the wedding was kind of a disaster, the marriage most definitely worked. They're still married 25 years later. A love that strong has to endure. That's one of the most selfless gestures I could think of. A woman I know got divorced just days after her wedding because she discovered that her new husband had an affair. But wait, it gets worse. She found out because apparently he cheated on the wedding with his affair who also was invited. They were busted by the father of the bride. I work at an office. The building is owned by my boss who is too cheap to shell out for actual maintenance service and has employees do handiwork around the clock. One day, it started to snow. The snow was sticking to the sidewalk and showed no signs of letting up, so of course me and my co-workers had to go out and clean it. So while my boss sat in his nice, cushy office, we start shoveling. One of my co-workers, let's call him X, is relatively new and having grown up in an apartment complex, has never shoveled before. Well, maybe that contributed to what happened next. He starts pushing the shovel in front of him at a crotch level, and eventually, the shovel head gets stuck on a raised brick and it pushes the handle end of the shovel into X's crotch. There was no shovel handle because he had been given a broken shovel with a rusted end. Castration being imminent, X proceeds to tuck and roll off the sidewalk and into oncoming traffic. Fortunately for X, somebody grabbed him and pulled him back to safety. Boss drove him to the emergency room and paid for the resulting tetanus shot and 14 stitches on the inner thigh. Needless to say, he was not allowed to shovel again. I don't remember seeing that deleted scene from when Dwight bought the building. In 2018, my dad was diagnosed with terminal cancer in April. My stepdad was diagnosed with terminal cancer in June. My mum was diagnosed with cancer in September. Treatable, thankfully. One of my closest friends was diagnosed with cancer, also treatable, in October, and I had to have my 12-year-old bunny put down a few days later. Then in November, my aunt died. I was in work when I took the call about my aunt and I just couldn't stop laughing because it was so ridiculous that this was happening all one after the other. It was hysteria. I wasn't amused by her passing. Fast forward to 2020. My stepdad died at the beginning of May and my dad died at the beginning of June. The friend who had cancer in 2018 called me the day after my dad's death to say her cancer is back and it's in her bones, and then my dad's funeral was scheduled for 3 days before Father's Day, which happened to be the day before my birthday this year. So yeah, that's my tale of woe. Worst thing is, I'm not convinced I'm even at the end of the story yet. Jeez. Talk about, but wait, there's more. I'm so sorry to hear about that. I had to remove my wisdom tooth in a really cheap dental clinic. The dentist has an eye problem in which he removes my tooth besides my wisdom tooth instead of my wisdom tooth with manual equipment. Removing one tooth is almost an hour. She then removes the not my wisdom tooth, and as soon as she realizes her mistake she then began on my real wisdom tooth. But as soon as she started working on it the anesthesia began to wear off. At the end I have to get a huge stitch on the site of not my wisdom tooth was supposed to be, and I have to go on my first day of work on Monday. Surgery happened on a Friday. See you for malpractice. This happened about 10 years ago. My boyfriend called me in the morning and dumped me over the phone. I was really upset and forgot to finish the laundry I'd started, so I had to go into work out of dress code. Of course, that would be the day our district manager was visiting and I got written up on the spot even though it was the first time I'd ever been out of dress code. Spent my break crying because the universe was just taking a dump on me. But wait, it gets worse. When I got home that evening I had a notice of eviction taped to my door because we had apparently been illegally sublet the apartment and had no clue. Didn't even cry because at that point it was just yup. That seems about right for today. You survived. I think I would have crumpled. An acquaintance got married in an extravagant $80,000 ceremony, that's $57,000 in freedom dollars, and broke up on their honeymoon. But wait, it gets worse. They split because the groom was cheating on the bride with a string of one-night stands. Meanwhile the bride was having an ongoing affair with the best man. But wait, it gets worse. They pretended to stay married for 6 months after out of shame, but it all came tumbling down when he made a huge Facebook rant calling her a W and tagging all their friends and family in it with the most dramatic shitstorm of a comments section known to humanity. But wait, it gets worse. The bride and the best man decided they wanted to have a baby and she immediately ran off with him and got knocked up. I'm willing to give you gold for screenshots of that thread. Dang, I've been waiting for this one. So take a wild guess where I work. Wuhan. Yes, that Wuhan. I went on holiday on the 20th of January. I was only supposed to be gone for 8 days in Seoul. Well, we all know what happened next. Wuhan went into lockdown the 23rd of January, so me and the wife had the choice of being stranded in Korea or stranded elsewhere in China where lockdowns were happening left and right and Wuhan folk were being treated like crap. So, stayed in Korea a month, then went to Thailand as Korea was just burning through savings. At this point my work decided even though I was still working remotely, they should knock 20% off my salary because I'm out of the country. After a month in Thailand we headed back to Bangkok to try to get a flight back to China. Turns out the previous tenant of our hotel room had had an orgy with 5 Thai and all 6 of them got the virus. So, yeah, got put into legally enforced isolation with the threat of a 2-year prison sentence if we left the apartment. Joy. Those 2 weeks isolation, my birthday, and more importantly the Chinese government closed the border to foreigners. So stranded in Thailand. Cool. Got caught in the Thai lockdown wave. As soon as that started to get better, I had to head back to the UK and my wife back to China. The 6-month being out of the country mark past which has fricked the PR I was about to apply for. Work then screwed me out of summer pay and flight allowance. So currently stuck in the UK. No idea when I'm getting home and just missed the wife's birthday. 7 months of sheer joy. Last year, March, my mill dies after lingering from a stroke for a few months. April, doctor sees something on mammogram and son is hospitalized for suicidal thoughts. May, testing and diagnosed with breast cancer. June, July and August, surgery and treatment for breast cancer. They got it all. August, Phil dies from lung cancer. October, son tries to hang himself and is in the hospital for 8 days. He is doing better now. This year, the same son has been in 2 car accidents. Neither his fault. One does 17k in damage to his brand new car, and my sister just died last week. Well crap, I'm so sorry. Back in 2016, my 5-year-old daughter came to me saying my stepfather had been touching her inappropriately. This caused an enormous rift in my family, and ended with me cutting ties with everyone but my actual father. But wait, it gets worse. My fiancé at the time said that my family drama was too much for her and left me. But wait, it gets worse. My actual father, who employed me at the time, used this opportunity to tell me he had to cut me from full-time to very limited part-time. So I went from making a $36k salary to making about $12k per year. All 3 of those events happened in the span of 1 week. But wait, it gets worse. My mother, who sided with my stepfather, worked at my daughter's school, and continued to antagonize her and my son to the point where I had to pull my kids out of school and transfer them to a school in my ex-wife's district. They didn't even have time to say goodbye to their friends. But wait, it gets worse. My stepfather and mother secretly visited my kids at their new school on Grandparents' Day without telling anyone, this prompting a restraining order from me and my ex-wife. That was a dark time in my life. Dang, I hope you and your kids are doing better now. I was in a rush because I woke up late. I then stubbed my toe really badly on the table. I had to rush to the embassy to get my passport done. I almost finished the 3-hour drive to get there when I realized I forgot all the documents I needed for my passport. Wish me luck, I am having it tomorrow. Once upon a time, some neighbors and I were in a dispute over where the property line was. I had wanted to plant a garden right on the property line, but the neighbors pitched a fit about it for some strange reason, screaming, throwing stuff at us, having their kids come over and stomp down all my plants. These guys were just flat out evil, so we call up surveyor to come out and find the property lines, and the neighbors ended up losing 30 featuring of their yard because they were still using the old property lines from when the subdivision was made back in the 1980s. Unfortunately for them, the previous owners of my house bought the 30 feet of land from the previous owners of their house back in 2003. I let them know about this and provided evidence. I even gave them a phone number to call to see if this is legit. So I gave them the legal required 24-hour notice to let them know that someone was going to come out to start digging post holes for a new 8-foot privacy fence. But wait, it gets worse. These dum-dums decided to get revenge by slashing all 4 tires on both vehicles in my driveway, which I ended up getting on camera. So I ended up taking them to court. However, the dum-dums were dumb again. They ended up slashing all 4 tires of the vehicle I was loaned by a friend while it was sitting in the courthouse parking lot, which is cameras. But wait, it gets worse. Because it wasn't my car, these dum-dums are now getting sued by 2 separate people for the same reason, and the same judge is presiding over both cases. But wait, it gets worse. Because the vehicle I was loaned was my friend's dog grooming van, it was loaded down with stuff that made it a bit too heavy for the rims to support the weight without the support of the tires. So now she needs to replace all 4 tires and all 4 rims. So not only am I suing these idiots for damages, court costs and repairs, so is my friend. Altogether they are now going to be out of pocket a little over $4,200 and some change to cover everything that they've damaged plus her lost wages, since that van is how she makes money. All of this bull's going on because they thought we were using 6 inches of their property. This feels more like a "but wait, it gets better" story. So after finding out she hooked up with 2 guys from work and one of their 14-year-old sons, my ex and I split. Of course, neither of us had a place to go, so we continued to live together for about a year after. But wait, it gets worse. Through this year I got to meet her many new boyfriends. The star members being a M-head with a gun, a guy who molested her sister in high school, and a cam guy that posted them having sex without telling her he was recording. But wait, it gets worse. Finally she comes back from a week of staying with the most recent guy and tells me she's finally found true love, and begins to berate me when I tell her I won't let her move our son into the house of her new beau on the south side of Wichita after only a week together. Her exact words were, "It's not fair to make me choose between happiness and her son." She ultimately chose to move out without our son, who I've raised on my own since. But wait, it gets worse. The love of her life is nearing 50, a lifelong drug user, and paraplegic from a drunken car wreck that he caused 10 years ago. That week they spent together was while he was in the hospital for pressure stores. Mind you, she's 22 at the time and this guy is literally older than both our dads. But wait, it gets worse. That wreck that left him wheelchair bound, that was the wreck that killed my ex's aunt. That's right, her new love is the man her aunt was dating when she was 12, who her whole family blames for the death of said aunt for deciding to drive home while blackout drunk. This has completely destroyed her relationship with her family. But wait, it gets worse. They got married after a year together but she still calls me to be about how awful he is. Holy crap, that was a roller coaster. At least she was the one who moved out and you got to keep your son. I work in the care of the disabled. One fine morning, I go up the stairs to wake a resident. I see a nice little turd on the ground. I sweat a bit at myself, but I'm thinking at least the person who did this didn't step into it and smear it everywhere. It's just a nice little dollop. I run downstairs to get gloves, bucket etc, and I'm gone for literally 2 minutes. I get back upstairs and the nice little dollop is now a flat pancake, and there are footprints. I follow the footprints. They lead into a bedroom. I knock on the door and open it. Inside, one of my residents is furiously washing his slippers with his bare hands, cleaning off the crap he stepped in. When he spots me he starts yelling at me about that little fat bee who's always crapping and pee on the floor. I just lost it at that point. The image of him washing up his slipper, mumbling to himself and getting into a rage still makes me laugh. Cleanup was a bit more than I'd wanted but not the worst I have ever seen. Better to laugh about these things than to get angry. It's great that one of the old people was known as the floor shitter, like, get some goddamn depends. Was on Tinder and met this girl. We talked for a bit and decided to exchange snaps. A few snaps and I find out she has a kid. We are both 18. But wait, it gets worse. I find out she's not 18 like her profile but actually 15. But wait, it gets worse. I tell her we cannot talk at all and she says age isn't a problem, my baby daddy is 21. And that's when I decided Tinder wasn't for me. I worked in an operating room and was on call. Arriving at the hospital, checked in with the doc and patient in pre-op. At least once per year we get someone with something stuck in their butt. The young man was there with his mom and sister, who explained the dildo got stuck Friday night, but that their grandma was sick so they waited until Sunday to bring him to the hospital so he could see her. Then per usual the family and patient is asked if they have any questions before we take him back. Mom says yeah. While he's in there, can you test him for STDs? His sister tested positive and was operating the dildo, so we want to make sure. I have so many questions, none of which I want to know the answer to. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.